Hi guys, in today's video we are taking a look at the children of the Celestials from the Marvel Universe called the Eternals. The Eternals are a race of humanoids appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics. They are described as an offshoot of the evolutionary process that created sentient life on Earth. The original instigators of this process, the alien Celestials, intended the Eternals to be the defenders of Earth, which leads to the inevitability of war against their destructive counterparts, the Deviants. The Eternals were created by Jack Kirby and made their first appearance in the Eternals #1, July 1976. The Eternals will debut in the Marvel Cinematic Universe with their own feature film Eternals, scheduled to release on November 5, 2021. In 1970, Jack Kirby left Marvel Comics to work at DC Comics, where he began the Saga of the New Gods, an epic story involving mythological and science fiction concepts, and planned to have a definite ending. However, the saga was left incomplete after the cancellation of the titles. Kirby then began working on the Eternals when he returned to Marvel. The Eternals saga was thematically similar to the New Gods, and the series was also eventually cancelled without resolving many of its plots. Writers Roy Thomas and Mark Gruenwald used the Eternals in a Thor storyline that climaxed in Thor number 301, resolving those lingering plotlines. Subsequent to the Thor storyline, the Eternals, and the mythology connected to them, have appeared or been mentioned in numerous Marvel comics. In particular, the Celestials' experiment on humanity has been used to explain how certain humans can develop superpowers. The Titanians, created by Jim Starlin, and Uranians, created by Stan Lee, were later reckoned as being Eternals as well. The Eternals returned for a 12-issue miniseries in 1985 under writer Peter B. Gillis and penciler Sal Buscema. According to comic book historian Peter Sanderson, editor-in-chief Jim Shooter disliked Gillis's scripts, so Walter Simonson wrote the final 4 issues. In 2000, a one-shot comic called New Eternals, Apocalypse Now #1 featured an older conflict between the Eternals and X-Men villain Apocalypse. In 2003, writer Chuck Austin and artist Kev Walker rebooted the franchise for Marvel's mature readers-focused Max imprint, resulting in The Eternal. Neil Gaiman, with artist John Romita Jr., created a 2006 miniseries, which helped bring the Eternals' role in the modern Marvel Universe up to date. Originally solicited as a 6-issue series, an extra issue was added to the run because, according to editor Nick Lowe, there was too much story to fit into the structure we set for ourselves. Neil was starting issue 5 and told me that he might need a 7th issue. He just had too much story to fit in 6 issues, even with the first and 6th double-sized. The Eternals returned in Jason Aaron's Avengers, and in issue number 4 they were all killed in a story arc involving the Dark Celestials. However, the characters were resurrected in their new ongoing series launched in January 2021. When the Celestials visited Earth 1 million years ago and performed genetic experiments on early proto-humanity, they created 2 divergent races: the long-lived Eternals and the genetically unstable and monstrously grotesque Deviants. These experiments also led to the capacity for superpowered mutations in humans. They also performed this experiment on other planets, such as the Kree and Skrull homeworlds, with similar results. Despite looking human, Eternals are much longer lived, but were not originally fully immortal, and that kept them from having much contact with their human cousins. Eternals have a low birth rate, they can interbreed with humans, but the result is always a normal human, although Joey Athena, son of Thena and a normal human, seems to have become an Eternal, with long-lived properties and powers. Despite this, the Eternals have in general protected the human race, especially from the Deviants, with whom they have always had an enmity. The Eternals also developed advanced technology. Long ago, a civil war broke out amongst the Eternals over whether to conquer the other races, with one faction led by Kronos and the other by his warlike brother, Uranos. Kronos' side prevailed, and Uranos and his defeated faction left Earth and journeyed to Uranus where they built a colony. Some of Uranos' group soon tried to return to Earth to rekindle the war, but they were attacked by a passing Kree ship and forced to land on Saturn's moon Titan. There they built another colony. Experiments performed by Kree scientists on a captured Eternal led them to go to Earth and perform their own genetic experiments on a group of humans, thus creating the Inhumans. One day, Kronos' experiments in cosmic energy caused a catastrophic release of energy throughout the Eternal city, Titanos, destroying it, activating latent genes in the Eternals, and disintegrating the scientist's body. The Eternals now found they could channel large quantities of cosmic energy themselves, granting them near godlike power. The accident left Kronos in an immaterial state, so a new leader had to be chosen. For the first time, the Eternals merged into a single being, the Unimind, to decide which of Kronos' sons, Zuras or Allers, should be the new leader. Zuras was chosen to be the Prime Eternal, and Allers chose to leave Earth to avoid causing another civil war, and journeyed to Titan. There he found that a war, allegedly caused by the Dragon of the Moon, had erupted on Titan and wiped out all but one member, a woman named Sui-san. Allers fell in love with her, and in time they repopulated Titan. Due to the mix of activated genes from Allers and unactivated ones from Sui-san, these new Titanian Eternals are not as powerful or immortal as Terran Eternals, but are more powerful and longer-lived than the earlier pre-Civil War Titanian Eternals. While Zuras ruled, 3 new Eternal cities were built. The first was Olympia, located in the mountains of Greece, near the main portal between the Earth dimension and the Olympians' home dimension, which led many ancient Greeks to confuse some of the godlike Eternals with members of the Olympian pantheon. Eventually, an agreement was reached with the gods where some Eternals, such as Athena, would impersonate the Olympians before their worshippers. The other 2 Eternal cities were Polaria, located in Siberia, and Asina, in the Pacific. 18,000 years ago, the Celestials returned to Earth. The Deviants attacked them, but the Celestials counterattacked, resulting in the sinking of Mu and Atlantis, and much worldwide havoc. The Eternals helped rescue many humans. An Eternal named Vulcan was entrusted by the Celestials with an artifact of great power for safekeeping. At some point during the early centuries, Icarus and the Eternals came into conflict with the immortal mutant, Apocalypse. This conflict ended when Icarus and the Eternals defeated him. Icarus believed Apocalypse was dead. 1,000 years ago, the Asgardian god Thor encountered some Eternals, but the encounter was erased from his mind to prevent him from learning about the Celestials, who were about to return to Earth. An Eternal named Ajak became the Celestial spokesperson and put himself to sleep when the Celestials left to wait for their return 1,000 years later to judge humanity. During the early 20th century, a human scientist made contact with the Uranian Eternals and was taken to live with them along with his young son, who would later become Marvel Boy. The Uranians were eventually killed by Deatherge. After World War II, some Eternals allied with humans and deviants to form the Damocles Foundation, which tried to create a new breed of superhuman to rule Earth. Some Eternals, such as Makari, were also active as superheroes or living amongst humans, keeping their true nature hidden. The Eternals also helped to move the Inhuman city to the Himalayas to keep it hidden. At some point, Thanos of the Eternals of Titan nearly destroyed their colony, but they rebuilt it and would help Earth's heroes to oppose him on several occasions. In recent times, Icarus met the archaeologist Daniel Damian and his daughter Margot and accompanied them into an old Eternal city in the Andes, where he awakened Ajak. Ajak began the process to receive the Celestials. These movements alerted the Deviants, who decided to attack New York and to provoke fear in the humans against the coming Celestials. When the Celestials returned to judge the worthiness of their creations a few years ago, the Eternals found themselves clashing with the Deviants again and decided to publicly reveal their existence to humanity. Zuras feared what would happen if the Celestials judged unfavorably. They encountered Thor again and were attacked by Thor's father Odin and the Olympian gods, who tried to prevent their interfering with the gods' plans to attack the Celestials. Eventually, the Eternals decided to help the gods and formed a Unimind to assist the Destroyer's assault on the Celestials. They were forced to dissolve back into Eternals by the Celestials, and the shock of the attack killed Zuras. Before his spirit fully left the material plane, he instructed his daughter Athena to take his people to explore space. Since then, the Eternals have helped Earth's heroes, particularly the Avengers, against several menaces. They also discovered the existence of the Titanian Eternals. Some time later, the Deviants aristocracy, led by Brother Toad, attacked Olympia, kidnapping the Eternals and intending to disintegrate them. The hero Iron Man, James Rhodes, rescued the Eternals and helped them defeat the Deviants. Then the Eternals transformed the Deviants aristocracy into a synthetic cube, killing them. The Eternals formed Unimond to discuss their future on Earth, after which most of the Eternals, led by Vulcan, went to the stars. But a handful, those most heavily involved in earthly affairs, remained behind on Earth. Athena came to lead the remaining Eternals, but she wasn't very respected by her subjects. With the ascension of Priest Lord Gore as leader of the Deviants, the Eternals joined the Avengers in defeating him after he absorbed the power of a Celestial and tried to gain godhood. Meanwhile, Icarus questioned Athena for her poor choices as leader of the Eternals. She was subtly being controlled by a brain mine put in her by Crow. After a special ceremony, Icarus succeeded her as leader of the Earth's Eternals. The lover of Icarus, Margot Damian, was captured by Gore's minions and was killed as a result of a deviant experiment on her. After the death of his daughter, Daniel Damian decided to take revenge against the Deviants and the Eternals. With the help of ancient eternal machines, he forged a prophecy to incite war between the two races and transformed Ajak in a murderous monster. When his plan was discovered by the Eternals, Ajak reverted to his original form and regretted the killings that he had committed, so he killed Damian and himself. The Eternals Gilgamesh and Cersei briefly become part of the superhero team Avengers. When Cersei became sick with the Mod-Werai disease, an incurable degenerating eternal disease, Icarus and other Eternals tried to bring her to Olympia and perform a rite of cleansing. Cersei rejected the idea, on the basis that the ritual was designed to kill the infected Eternal, and solicited his family to perform the Gan-Joseon bond between her and her lover the Black Knight. Icarus was furious and performed the bond without consent of the knight. Later Athena and other Eternals helped the Avengers in the battle against the Gatherers and Proctor, who was an alternate Black Knight and was who infected Cersei with the Mod-Werai disease for spite. The Eternals fought once more against Gore and the Deviants, with the help of the Heroes for Hire. The Mad Priest tried to form an anti-mind with some captured Eternals to defeat any invasion of the Celestials. Later they were at odds with Apocalypse and briefly posed as a superhero team called the New Breed. When Celestials literally began raining down on Earth, the Avengers are forced to reunite again and just in time to see the arrival of the final host, which is composed of dark Celestials that are each physically unique and were the ones who easily took down their brethren. In an attempt to learn more about these new breed of Celestials, Iron Man and Doctor Strange travel to the mountains of Greece in order to try to get some answers from the Eternals. When Stark and Strange arrived, there were no signs of life to be found as almost all of the Eternals were dead, with Strange deducing that the wounds were self-inflicted. Only Icarus was left barely alive and reveals that the Eternals were never meant to protect humanity as they thought. Instead, they were actually created to cultivate them, as the Celestials saw the human population as a useful pathogen to act as antibodies against the Horde. This discovery drove all Eternals mad, which either made them turn against each other or commit suicide. Icarus is also able to reveal that the only way to prevent the final host from unleashing the Horde is the Unimind, and sends a message into Stark's mind before the last Eternal died. Due to the cosmic energy that suffuses an Eternal's body and the unbreakable mental hold they have over their physiological processes, the Eternals of Earth are effectively immortal. They live for millennia, do not fatigue from physical exertion, are immune to disease and poison, and are unaffected by environmental extremes of cold and heat. Most cannot be injured by conventional weaponry, and even if they somehow are, an Eternal can rapidly regenerate any damage, as long as they are able to retain their mental hold over their bodies. This mental bond can be broken. In the 2006 series it was also stated that Eternals are able to absorb oxygen directly from water, and therefore cannot drown. In the same series, Icarus was plunged into molten metal and experienced great pain, but no physical injury, which the Deviants attributed to a force field which protects Icarus even when unconscious. It is unclear if all Eternals share this degree of protection. At one time, the official limit to the Eternals' durability was such that they could only be permanently destroyed by dispersing their body's molecules over a wide area. This degree of extreme durability was revealed to have increased to a much greater degree, as demonstrated in the 2006 Eternals limited series. It is shown that even total molecular dispersal is insufficient to destroy an Eternal. As long as the machine, a restoration device of celestial origin, possibly the Earth itself, keeps running, any destroyed Eternal will eventually return, as was the case with Icarus, after he was completely vaporized by a particle accelerator, as part of a series of experiments performed upon him by the Deviants. This same cosmic energy can be channeled for a number of superhuman abilities. All Eternals are potentially capable of superhuman strength. The limits of their strength can be increased as a result of years of focusing some of their energy towards that purpose. Projecting concussive blasts, heat, and/or blinding flashes of energy from their eyes and hands. Flight and levitating others, reading controlling minds. Generating illusions. Teleporting vast distances, though most Eternals prefer not to use this ability as many find it uncomfortable, and according to the 2006 series, it also greatly depletes their store of cosmic energy. Transmuting objects, altering both their shape and composition. The extent of this ability can vary from one Eternal to another. Force field generation providing invulnerability to harm. In addition, groups of Eternals, as few as 3 at a time, can initiate a transformation into a Gestalt being called the Unimind, a vastly powerful psionic entity that contains the totality of the powers and abilities of all the beings that comprise it. Some Eternals choose to focus on a particular power in order to increase their effectiveness with it. Cersei, for example, has developed the power of transmutation further than any other Eternal. Additionally, some Eternals choose to focus their cosmic energies into other, non-standard abilities. Icarus, for example, channels cosmic energy to greatly enhance his senses, while the Interloper uses his to generate fear in others, and Makari uses his cosmic energies for super speed. The Eternals are split between 5 different generational groups. First generation Eternal, those born before the fall of Titanos. Arlok, Astron, Dinah, Kronos, Cronus, Master Elo, Asinus, Shastra, Irio, Uranos. Second generation Eternal, those alive at the time of Cronus's experiment. Mentor, Allers, Amit, Cybele, Forgotten One Gilgamesh, Helios, Perse, Raker, Tulin, Valken, Barako, Zuras. Third generation Eternal, those born after Cronos' experiment but before the second host. Aegir, Ajak, Arax, Atlo, Domo, Icarus, Interloper, Mara, Phastos, Sigmar, Thanos, Thena, Viren, Zarin, Eros. Fourth generation Eternal, those born after the coming of the second host 20,000 years ago. Argus, Said, Kai Demon, the Delphin brothers, Droog, Coryphos, Makari, Psychos, Circe, Kingo Sunan, El Vampiro. Fifth generation Eternal, those born after the coming of the third host 3,000 years ago. Orel, Sprite, Titanus. If you like what I do. If you really like what I do, smash that like button. Comment down below and subscribe for more content.